Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to look at John chapter 4, verses 1 through 42. So there's a lot of text here. This is the scene of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman at the well. Now, this is a wonderful scene in and of itself, and I'll get to it in just a minute. But we need to keep this scene in its larger context. It follows after the conversation that Jesus had with Nicodemus, which I talked about in the previous video. These two conversations need to go together, Jesus and Nicodemus and Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well, because there are some parallels here. There are some commonalities here. There are also some opposites here. For example, in the conversation with Jesus and Nicodemus, Jesus is talking to a well-respected, well-known man. In this scene, he's talking to an unknown woman. Talking with Nicodemus, he's talking to a Jewish person. In this scene, he's talking to a Samaritan. In the scene with Nicodemus, there's a misunderstanding about what Jesus means by being born again, or born anew, or born from above. Here, in this scene with the Samaritan woman, there's misunderstanding about what he means by living water. These two conversations go together. A lot of times when we read the Bible, we only read one little section of it at a time, or one little scene at a time. But you gotta have the larger context sometimes. It's like watching one scene from a movie. That scene might be a great scene by itself, but it helps to know the larger context of the whole movie, or at least know what came before the scene and what comes after it, because context matters. In this particular scene, Jesus is talking to this Samaritan woman. Okay, so why is that important? Jesus talked to a lot of people. Samaritans were outsiders. Why? It goes all the way back to Old Testament times, when the 12 tribes of Israel ended up coming together as one kingdom, and then they split into two kingdoms, and then they got taken into exile. Well, the Samaritans are the descendants of the people of Israel intermarrying with the people who conquered them. So, in a way, they're mudbloods, to use a term from Harry Potter. They're dirty bloods. This is kind of the idea that some people had of Samaritans. Even though Samaritans said they worshiped the same God as the Jews, which they probably did, there was still this conflict. It was kind of like a race conflict, right? People of different races can worship the same God, but sometimes there's still this tension, just because you have different backgrounds. This is the tension that we see playing out oftentimes between Jews and Samaritans in the Bible. But of course, Jesus doesn't care about those lines. Jesus will talk to anybody. Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman when she comes to get water from the well. Now, she's coming in the middle of the day. Here's another connection to the Nicodemus story. Nicodemus comes at night, right? So there's another opposite. This woman comes in the heat of the day to get water. Well, why? Well, most of the time, when women came to wells to get water, they would come in the early morning when it was cooler. So the very fact that this woman comes to a well at midday, all by herself, says something about how the community has treated her. Jesus still talks to her. And she tries to get her water, and he talks to her, and they get in this conversation about living water. Now, the woman would have thought, when Jesus mentioned living water, that he meant flowing water. If you see a flowing stream, it looks like it's got life to it. It's a whole lot different than just water that's sitting in a pond, or water that's in a well and not moving. Moving water has an energy to it, a life to it. That's what this woman would have thought living water meant. Well, of course, Jesus was talking about himself, right? This is part of the misunderstanding that's going on in this scene. As they keep talking, the woman starts to realize maybe this guy is more than he seems. As they talk, Jesus reveals to her that he knows about her. He knows about her relationships and how often she's been married and that sort of thing. They end up talking theology about where should we worship. You Jews say to worship this place, Samaritans say to worship this place. So they get into these deep kind of personal conversations at this well. Eventually, the woman starts to realize that Jesus is more than he seems. He's not just a stranger in need of water. He's the one who's giving her water. She ends up leaving her jar at the well and rushing back to the people in town saying, I just met this guy at the well. He can't be the Messiah, can he? She thinks he is, and she kind of wants confirmation that he is. So people from the town come out and they meet him, and they end up saying that they believe because they've seen Jesus, not just because of what they heard from the woman. Really long story, but one thing that we can pull from this story is that Jesus encounters all of us, even the Samaritan woman at the well. Jesus encounters you. Even when you are treated like an outsider, even when you've got kind of a messed up personal life, even when you've got theological questions, Jesus meets you. And you can still tell others about Jesus, just like this Samaritan woman did. And because she told them, some of them ended up trusting Jesus too. So no matter who you are or what your background is, Jesus comes to meet you, and you can help others trust in Jesus too. There's your 5-minute Bible study. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.